We also have a restoration department. As I mentioned earlier, Carl and I are both participating in restoration, besides being docents. This is our current airplane, our current project. This is an airborne radar tracker launched from an aircraft carrier. And there's the radar dome right there. Probably still in there, because I don't think anybody's taken that apart in the 20 plus years that it's been on the property. Jody Rell, the former governor, her husband flew that airplane when he was in the Navy before he went on to become a pilot for TWA. This is part of our DC-3 that Carl and I worked on for 11 years, getting painted in the colors of Eastern Airlines from the 40s and 50s. This is our most recent, these two are our most recent restoration projects. This is an A7 Corsair that was pulled out of our storage in the woods. We affectionately call it Area 51. but it's getting torn apart and they're cleaning it up. And the Navy wanted to know what the restoration plan was, because most of our military aircraft at the museum are still property of the government. They're either on permanent loan or sometimes temporary loan, and we've had a couple aircraft get taken back. But they still own the aircraft, which is why some of those aircraft you cannot sit in, like that one picture I showed you where the gentleman was sitting in the P-47. The Navy controls everything that happens to that. And this is an interesting project, just started within the last, 2 or 3 months, Carl. This is a Chrysler 16-cylinder piston engine. It's the largest piston engine built. I think it was supposed to have gone into a P-51, although I don't know that it ever made it, because they had big engines in the P-51 as it was. They had the Merlin, Rolls-Royce Merlin, and others. This is a 16-cylinder. I do that again. It's a 16-cylinder V16, and the guys are getting ready to clean that up.
Those 51s were the death of the Third Reich.
Yeah.
They were fast.
So we have about 100 volunteers at the New England Air Museum. We have about 10 to 12 in our library, where we receive and categorize and catalog and loan out periodicals and books and articles to other museums. We do research for other museums. Frequently we get calls from Udvar Hazy at the Air and Space Museum to ask questions about what we've got in our storage. We have docents like Carl and I. We have about 40 docents or so that offer tours, offer assistance to our guests every day of the week, every day that we're open. And they'll assist you in getting in some of those aircraft. And there's about 35 or 40 restoration volunteers that work 2 days a week. The hours are usually about 8 to 2, sometimes 8 to 3, depending upon the project. So when you add it all up, it's about 100 volunteers. They're relatively small paid staff. It's only about 12 to 15 right now, I think. But we're doing more and more public outreach. We have one young lady that is advertising and renting out the facility for weddings, reunions, and parties at the museum. If you've never seen a wedding reception in a hangar, you need to get invited to one of those. I was at a reception this past summer. 250 guests in the military hangar. The bride and groom had actually gotten married in April, but they wanted to have their reception at the Air Museum. So mid-October, they brought all their guests and their parents and their wedding party, and they did it all over again.
How much?
I don't know what the prices are, but it's making a lot of money for the museum. I'm telling you that. It's probably making as much or more money than our public guests do. But it's really fun. The aircraft, the museum really gets lit up, and we have our own caterer that comes in and they sell the package with the rental. They can bring in their own music if they want, whether it's a band or a DJ or whatever. But we do have a very capable caterer from West Springfield that comes down and does just a marvelous job with the food. And here's our education finally. That's, like I said, that's one of our primary roles. And you can see here's our summer camp where the kids are drilling holes in pieces of sheet metal and then gonna rivet them together. And these are some Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts that come together at the museum. We teach them about aerospace and how aircraft work and stay in the air. And a couple of our docents here working with the kids to make sure they stay safe. It's a lot of fun. You see the eyes light up literally in what the kids do when they're there. This is an interesting vehicle right here. This is a CH-54 Sky Crane from Sikorsky. It's the largest heavy lift helicopter, and we've got one right in our first building. When you walk in, you kind of walk through the door, staring you in the face, almost knocks you over. But like I said, inspire and serve and educate about the mystery and the story of flight. With that, any questions? Yes?
Yes, with the outreach program with the students, I
Mhm.
believe, is there any credit that they get according to what school they're attending?
I don't believe that's the case. The schools reach out to us.
Yeah,
And they contact our Director of Education, Amanda Goodhart Parks. And I don't know that there's any interaction that goes on that gives them any kind of credit for a science credit or a history credit or anything. Good question, but I don't know the answer to that.
oh, maybe that's something maybe they would like to look into.
Yeah. I'm
Working
sure,
in
man.
museums myself, I would say that the programs at the New England Air Museum are probably designed to meet current curricular needs in the school programs, and as curriculum changes, they revise the programs, and the teachers are aware, and the museum staff is aware, and they're selecting programs to bring the students in that will fulfill curricular obligations.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes?
Are there any white whales that the museum are currently, or maybe in the past, trying to bring into the museum that aren't there currently?
We are always looking for new aircraft for our collection. We recently received an F-15 Eagle from Barnes Airfield and the 104th Fighter Squadron at Barnes in Massachusetts. That aircraft was put into service in 1984. It has a MiG kill in Desert Storm. And I mean, that 104th group at Barnes is slated to get F-35s in 2026. So they're starting to retire their F-15s. And so that F-15 came in over the summer last year. It came actually on our property for the first time on August 1st. It flew into Bradley about a week earlier, and the Air Guard decommissioned it. You know, it still has its engines, but they probably took a lot of the sensitive stuff out of the aircraft. So that, you know, we lock our buildings and we keep them under lock and key, but you never know if somebody really wants a piece of avionics or a piece of armament or something like that. That's, you know, those locks aren't going to stop them. Yes.
I came in late, and we're celebrating 100 years.
Yes.
Are you going to be having any big party? Did I miss that?
No, you didn't miss that.
So we can talk about that at the end, but I would like to give Carl the opportunity to get started on the Pratt information.
We have more opportunities
Okay.
working with Gianna and also working with Pratt Whitney, so we'll talk about it. Okay, Carl.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much for coming today. Not only did John say the weather was reasonable, but there's a UConn men's basketball game on, so thank you for missing the second half.
It's okay.
The first half wasn't going so good, so I think you made the right choice. Back in 1973, I just graduated from college and accepted a position at Pratt Whitney Aircraft. I was only going to stay a year. I was married, I was engaged to a young lady in Waterbury. This was the closest job offer. If I took this job, her mom wouldn't cry when we got married. It would be close to home. However, what I found was, as soon as I got there, the processes, the product, the hardware, the people were phenomenal, fantastic. So, I never left. 40 years at Pratt Whitney, as some mentioned, my hair was brown when I arrived, gray right now, and I earned every piece of that gray hair. In 2013, when I retired, my wife said, congratulations, but you're not staying home every day for lunch. That began my career retirement planning program. Joined the museum as a docent, and then as a restoration associate with Keith, and now help the museum a little bit with some curatorial projects, some new exhibits that they're making up. It's been a great experience for me. How many people in this audience are working at Pratt or have worked at Pratt? Excellent. How many of the people in the audience know somebody who's worked at Pratt? In your community, your church, at whatever. Phenomenal. When I started here in 1973, what I soon realized was that as soon as I told people where I was working, the gas station, the local retail store, the supermarket, Pratt Whitney, immediately they said, oh, that was my Uncle Frank, my Aunt Mary, and they had a story for me. At that point, I began to realize not only how important Pratt Whitney was, but how important Pratt Whitney was to this region and to this town. As I said, I never left. This is the center point of our story. This is Fred Rentschler. He's 45 years old. It's about 1932. And he's standing in front of his new private Corsair, Vought Corsair. That Vought Corsair is pretty important to him because earlier in his career, it's Chance Vought who gave him some advice about forming a company. It's Chance Vought that gave him the criteria for the air-cooled engine that, if possible, would revolutionize the aircraft industry. If Fred looked over his shoulder to the right, you would see the largest aero manufacturing plant in the world. The new Pratt Whitney plant, over 500,000 square feet, making air-cooled engines, 60% of the domestic market. If you looked and gazed where Fred is looking now, you would see a 6,000-foot runway, part of the 600-acre facility, because if you make engines, it's okay to test them on the ground, but you know what? What the engine has taught us, right, Jeff? It does stuff in the air that you don't expect. So you got to test those things. And the customers of the day, Amelia Earhart, Jimmy Doolittle, Roscoe Turner, Earl Ortman, Speed Holman, come to the factory with their airplanes for tuning up and for that little customized Wasp engine that they want to get for the next air race. Hey, I got to dispel a rumor. Those two little kids in the background, the little kid is not me.
It's not me either.
It's Keith. I'm a big kid. I'm a little older than Keith. What Fred Rentschler could not possibly have imagined is the next 10 years. What's going to happen to his company is going to prosper, engines are going to get more powerful, and the dark clouds of war are going to overcome the United States and the world. He is not going to realize that during World War II, Pratt Whitney Aircraft or its licensees are going to make 50%, 600 million horsepower for all the piston-driven propeller aircraft in the United States. 98% of the large cargo planes are going to come from Pratt Whitney. Quite an accomplishment. Let's see. John told me. Yeah. And more important for the health of Pratt Whitney, that plant's going to work 24/7. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, no vacations. The lights are never going to turn off. So not only is it going to be powering freedom for Pratt Whitney, but for the people of this community in East Hartford. It is hard to overstate the importance of East Hartford, Manchester, Vernon, and the surrounding towns to support the war effort. So much so that in 2022, East Hartford, Connecticut, because of the Pratt Whitney war effort, was named one of the World War II heritage cities.
Oh.
There's only one per state. It was in the first group of 18. So not only am I pleased to help the East Hartford Public Library and talk to you about Pratt Whitney, but I'm actually privileged to do the talk right here in East Hartford. I don't know that I'm going to be able to give another talk here in this American heritage city.